morning everyone. On behalf of LACAS A-Level Johor Town Campus and the LACAS Alumni Relations Department, I would like to welcome you all to today's celebration of International Women's Day 2025. I would like you to note that you're requested to keep your phones on silent. This year's theme for International Women's Day is Accelerate Action. This reminds us that while we have come a long way, we must continue with a great sense of urgency to support women empowerment in our own ambits wherever and whenever we can. LACAS has a proud legacy of being the first ever college in Lahore offering A-level to women, thereby setting the bar for gender equity in the late 80s. Today's panel discussion will explore how our women alumni are imbibing that legacy, not only within our community but beyond. I'm very excited to introduce our today's moderator for the panel. Let's welcome Ms. Neha Mufti. Ms. Neha is the co-curricular lead at LACAS head office. She will be guiding us through today's conversation and ensuring that we gain meaningful insights from our expert panelists. So, Neha, it's over to you.
Thank you, Zainab. Good morning, everyone. It's such a privilege to be here with you all today on International Women's Day 2025. I'm Neha Mufti, and I have the honor of moderating this panel discussion today. Our discussion today is titled Accelerating the Change in Conversation with LACAS Women. This year's theme, Accelerate Action, reminds us that while we've made significant strides, there's still much to do, especially in empowering women in all fields, including education, leadership, sports, and entrepreneurship. Today we have an incredible panel of LACAS alumni, each of whom brings a unique perspective and valuable experience to the conversation. I encourage you all to engage with us today, whether it's through asking questions, reflecting on what you hear, or thinking about how you can personally contribute to this process of accelerating change. The stories we hear today are just the beginning, and your participation is what truly makes this discussion impactful. So without further ado, let's meet our incredible panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ms. Noor Malik on stage. Ms. Meher Bano Qureshi is from the class of 2017. She's a national and international tennis player and former Pakistan #2 in ladies singles. She's represented Pakistan twice in the Billie Jean King Cup in 2019 and 2022, and is also an ITF certified level 2 tennis coach. Now let me call on stage our second panelist, Ms. Raniya Hosain, also from the class of 2017. She's a PhD student in post-colonial literature at the University of Cambridge. She has also won the 2020 Zenith Harun Rashid Writing Prize and co-founded the online literary magazine named Spacebar. Ms. Raniya also made LACAS proud when she won the Queen's Commonwealth Essay Competition in 2014 when she was only 15 years old. Next up, please welcome Dr. Sara Alam from the class of 2007. Dr. Sara is the co-founder of Aesthetics Lab and is a doctorpreneur blending medicine and innovation and bringing international standards to Pakistan's healthcare landscape. She was the winner of She Loves Tech 2022 and Women in Tech 2023. Welcome, Lisa. Last but not least, let's welcome Ms. Meher Bano Qureshi from the class of 2001. Ms. Meher Bano Qureshi is an emerging political figure who successfully carved a space for herself through her advocacy and public service. She actively works towards policy reform and governance improvements, striving to make a meaningful impact in Punjab and beyond. Welcome, Ms. Meher Bano. what your biggest challenge has been as a woman politician.
So many challenges. Since we have to keep this non-political, which for a political person is kind of difficult. I think the greatest challenge for me, if I put my gender aside, of course, is the political environment in which we are operating. But I don't want to get into that too much. I think if we focus on, as a woman, I think it's, and navigating public spaces has never been easy for women in Pakistan. And so when you are thrown into public life like that, you face a lot of challenges. Firstly, I think the first impression people have of a woman coming into, say, politics is they question your ability. Are you worthy of being here? Are you here because you're somebody's child or because of some contact? They don't look at you based on your own merit. So I think you have to work twice as hard to prove yourself. Whereas I feel they're more accepting of men when they come into the same field. And I feel that might be true in a lot of fields. Women have to work twice as hard to prove their worth. And I found it to be the same. But of course, when you're in public life, there's sort of the attacks that are made on you are associated with your gender because they think it's easier to pick on a woman. So you have to be cognizant of that, mindful of that, and continue and persist despite all of that. So I think as a woman in politics, you need to have even thicker skin than a regular politician. It is challenging. Everything is challenging for girls, not to dishearten anybody, but you got to work twice as hard because you have to win at the end of it, you know. And I think one of the best ways to do that is not to see men as your enemies. I think they can be your greatest allies, and that's what you need to work on building allies. There is a gender divide, but that doesn't mean that the other gender is your enemy. There will be many people who will try to keep you down because I think women are inherently or innately against the status quo because we benefit the most from questioning and challenging that, which is why we need more women in every field, especially public spaces, especially public life, and especially politics. Because the more female leaders we have, I think the more change we can see. So, you know, push hard, fight those boundaries, shatter the glass ceiling, and make allies while you do it because it makes it easier.
Thank you so much for sharing. That must have been quite a big obstacle to overcome at the time. And it's possible that the same situations are experienced in other domains. Ms. Noor, sports still remains a very male-dominated field. What challenges have you faced and how have they shaped your journey?
As a female tennis player, I've faced many challenges. One of them is that there were like really limited opportunities for female athletes, and you know, they don't get many opportunities to play more tournaments, more matches, and play abroad. So yeah, one of them is this, and the other one is I feel societal pressure. So there's a lot of pressure from the society, do this, do that, and you know, females get pressurized and they don't pursue their dreams. So yeah, I think these two, but I think we females have, you know, this has made us more stronger. So you know, yeah, one of the thing she said that building alliances with your supportive colleagues is like a really good thing. So we should do that more.
It's inspiring to see how you overcome such challenges in the sports domain. I think that generally the standards that are applied to women do have more pressure attached to them. I believe Dr. Sara could have some thoughts to share on this. As an aesthetic physician, how do you navigate the ongoing conversation around beauty standards, and how do you ensure that your work is contributing positively in that regard?
That's an excellent question because the field that I'm in, I think beauty standards are set by the things that we see on social media, the kind of things that are being pushed towards us. There is also societal expectations of how you should look like, the trends that are happening all around. considering that, when I got into the field of aesthetics, we were very mindful of the fact that we don't want to push the wrong narrative to the younger generation and also other women as well. Because we don't want to give someone, a filtered version of themselves. We want to make them love who they are within their own skin. We want to enhance their natural beauty, and that is what we're promoting. So with, Aesthetics Lab at least, we're not selling beauty. We want women to be self-confident. We want them to be comfortable within themselves, and that in its true sense, I feel, is what an empowered woman feels like, when she's absolutely comfortable and loves herself for who she is.
Very true, absolutely. And questioning such standards and making sense of them is such an important role that is played by us women, and without us being aware of it most of the time when it's happening on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure Ms. Raniya has also experienced such situations in academia, for example. As a woman in academia, what challenges have you faced in your journey, and how have they influenced your approach to teaching, research, and mentoring young women?
Yeah. So I'm doing a PhD in literature in the humanities, so it's a quote-unquote girl subject, right? There's a strict gender division of what women study in universities and what men study in universities, as if there's an innate sort of ontological structure of the male mind that makes them better at science, math, engineering, STEM fields. And as there's something in the female mind that makes you somehow more creative, artistic, in touch with the spirit more than the mind. And I think that this is an untrue division, but it's one that's perpetuated from an early age by teachers, by other students, by social expectations on what it is possible for you to achieve. I think also as a woman in academia, one thing I've noticed is even if women do end up studying in academia, we end up studying male authors. We end up using male critics to analyze those male authors. So it's up to us at this point to establish a lineage of women who are thinking about other women, women who are critiquing other women with an awareness of the gender dynamics at play at every section of our and at every level of our thinking about the world. Because patriarchy is an invisible force, yes, but it's an all-encompassing force. It seeps into every aspect of our daily lives without us even realizing it. And I think as an academic, one of the things that you want people to do is to be aware of the invisible forces that are shaping your day-to-day life. So calling attention to those is very, very important for me in my project of research and my project of teaching.
Absolutely, you've mentioned some very important points, and it's so necessary for all of us to analyze our approach to our work with the same perspective. Thank you for sharing. Ms. Noor, in regards to how you've approached your work, how do you feel you've encouraged other aspiring sportswomen?
I recall a story of a young girl. She was really hesitant to play tennis. She came up to me and she told me about this. So I sat down with her and shared my experiences with her. And after that, she gained a bit of confidence. So I feel I made an impact on her life somehow. And apart from this, there was also a young little kid who came up to me and she told me that she looks upon me and she follows me on Instagram and watches all my tennis videos. So she said, I'm really fond of you. I want to be a tennis player like you. So I think that made me really happy, and I think I made an impact on a young girl's life. So I think this is the
absolutely. That must be it. That's wonderful. I believe that in a situation like that, there's a lot of fear that one needs to overcome considering our context, and it must be wonderful to see the kind of impact you're having.
Yeah,
in that regard.
After that she started to play in her college, she represented her college too. So
That's amazing.
I think,
Wonderful. Ms. Meher Bano, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this aspect as well. In your domain, are there any specific initiatives you've seen that you believe have made or are making a positive impact on the nation?
Well, of course, I think the greatest and the most impactful initiative that we've seen to bring women in, more women in politics is the reserve seat quota that we set to encourage more women to participate by making their access to political life and parliament easier. And a majority of the women that are in parliament today are there on that quota of reserve seats. I think we do need to change that trend. We need more women contesting the elections, because when you put yourself out there in the field like that, you go to your voter that is also female. So obviously we all know that the bulk of Pakistan is rural. So your majority constituencies, your constituents are living in rural Pakistan. Now they will be more encouraged to participate in the electoral process and feel that they are part of the system when they see more female candidates. So my first election that I contested in 2022, it was a by-election, and I focused my entire campaign on, well, I had the luxury of having my father and my brother campaign, so I chose to go just directly to the women, because it's a conservative area with South Punjab, men don't go into the women, and I used my gender to my advantage over there. And I went to the women, I took the message to them and encouraged them to participate, because when your vote is being counted, it has the same weight as a man, right? It's the same vote. And we think that that's obvious. But you have to go and tell these women that this is the one area or the one field in which, you know, like, aapka barabari ka vote hai, aapki barabari ki awaaz hai. Now that's a very novel concept, where they hear, कि, what do you mean? मेरी आवाज़ और एक मर्द की आवाज़ एक जैसी है, and absolutely एक जैसी है, क्योंकि one vote, one person. It doesn't matter if male or female. So I made that the center of my campaign, encouraging women to come out and participate in the electoral process, and to do so based on their needs, to do so based on their concerns. So to not take dictation or vote on family lines or whatever everybody in the household was saying. And what we do find is that where a woman, and I found this in my experience, you know, the more I've engaged with people, where a woman is strong in the household, she actually becomes a greater influence on how the household votes. So she can be a very powerful voice. You just have to sometimes make them realize the amount of power that they have, occupy that space, and I think the more women we have in politics, whether on a reserve seat or a general seat, I think the more we change those norms, the better environment we create for more women to enter that. Because a lot of women are dissuaded coming into politics. It can be dirty, the kind of attacks that obviously women are softer, easier targets. I come from a political background. I thought that that would be a shield for me. You know, my father's a big name in politics, and I thought, I won't get attacked like that. But that's not the case. You know, my first election, I filed my nomination papers, and I think 24 hours didn't even pass, and I had to face a horrendous trolling campaign, you know, based on my gender, because it was my photos, you know, my private photos where my head is not covered, or my arms were not covered, you know, being taken and thrown across social media. And it's okay when somebody's sitting in Lahore or Karachi looking at these pictures on Twitter and going, oh, well, what's the big deal? But it's not okay when that somebody is sitting in rural South Punjab and they not just cover their heads, maybe they cover their faces too, they are not even allowed in public spaces, and they're looking at these photos, and then they have a certain idea of you, or the value you represent. And then, so that's one aspect, and then the way you're attacked, I mean, there's a lot of sexual innuendo, there's a lot of sexual violence in the trolling as well, you know. And so you really need very, very thick skin, really. And then it was really funny actually when we would talk about it, everybody would say, you know, it's okay, you're in politics, you need thick skin, and I'm like, this is not about thick skin, you know, one still has a heart, and you still feel it. So thick skin doesn't mean that you stop feeling emotions. Thick skin doesn't mean that you don't get upset or it doesn't bother you. Thick skin actually means that despite all of that, you continue to do what you're doing. Despite the hurt or the pain that it might cause you, you don't give up on what you set out to do. That is the definition of thick skin. So there is all of that. All of that happens. But what was most rewarding was when I went out, and so I have two elections to compare with, and there was the 2024 election. Obviously, and I noticed that at least in my constituency, because of 2 years of concerted effort, there was greater participation for women in the election. Also, they were like, our candidate's a woman, so they felt strongly. It was an emotional connection for them. They wanted to come out. Of course, it was a horrendous environment in which we had the elections. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear mongering. It wasn't a very open environment. I feel had it been, we would have seen greater participation from women across Pakistan. But there's a lot of people that didn't come out to vote because they were scared. The phone lines were switched off. So there's a lot of confusion. But I find that if you put yourself out there as a candidate, you speak to women directly, as I did. I could see like young women in the audience, seeing a woman standing there speaking, their eyes would light up. You saw that hope and that excitement in their eyes, and they started believing, okay, oh, we can do this too. We can dream for more. We don't just have to get married and have kids or take care of the house. We can do that, and we can be more than that. And I think that is the greatest impact having more women in public life or in all sorts of public spaces creates. It creates hope. It allows other girls to dream. And I think that is the greatest service we can do to our gender by putting ourselves out there and giving other people a chance to think that they can too.
Absolutely. What we see in women's leadership positions also has an impact on what women believe they can accomplish, right? Dr. Sara, in regards to Ms. Meher Bano's points on this, what kind of mentorship and support did you receive in your entrepreneurial journey, and how do you plan to continue forward?
Yeah, I think during my journey, because I was going from a purely medicine field into entrepreneurship, I really didn't know the ABCs of business and entrepreneurship. So for me, initially it was pretty hard. I wanted that kind of support. I was, trying to gauge that support in however way, whether it was from self-learning, whether it was from mentors or networking. But like, a woman entrepreneur, like in any field actually, a woman, Meher Bano mentioned that you have to work twice as hard to be taken seriously. That was the case, and especially for someone who was jumping ships. I did feel that I had to, learn pretty quickly, but I was very lucky in the fact that very early on in our startup journey, I got to sort of apply into this startup competition, which was like a crash course for me. That was that, startup school for me, where they literally had those mentors out there, which was basically in She Loves Tech and Women in Tech, that I got to meet those mentors, have those networking opportunities that a normal person maybe wouldn't if they weren't enrolled in that sort of a competition. So for me, that was very pivotal. It made me aware of the fact that I was much more accessible to finding people who could actually be pivotal in our business as well. So when we won She Loves Tech and I got to represent Pakistan in Singapore, I got to meet with mentors from abroad. That really, really widened my horizon, because I felt like we were living in a bubble, and now that we were talking to other people and mentors and all of that, it really expanded my vision into seeing that there's so much more that we could achieve. So I genuinely feel that I got lucky because I had support from a lot of avenues that normally people generally don't. And women are very hesitant generally to ask for help. That was the case with me as well. Initially when I started off, I could see the skepticism in people seeing a woman in leadership in a high growth sort of business, seeing whether is she going to be able to do it, what is happening. So it takes time.
It's kind of like you walk in ready for the judgment before you even get started.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's it's very fulfilling to see when you do prove the naysayers wrong. Sadly, in Pakistan, only 1% women entrepreneurs exist. And why is that so? Because it's really difficult. The male-dominated industry that we're in, there's lack of access to funding. There is, lack of support in terms of networking. There is this cultural sort of, expectation that women who are in leadership roles either can't be personally, thriving and professionally thriving. So there's this skepticism that are they going to be able to do both? So I do feel that having that support network, whether it's reaching out to people through, LinkedIn or wherever, all these accelerators, all these competitions, those are one ways that all of you can, gain that support.
Absolutely, thank you so much for sharing. Hearing about such experiences does make one think about the collective experience of women in Pakistan, and we are seeing a surge in feminist perspectives on recurring issues. Ms. Raniya, I'm curious to know, do you feel that feminism has evolved, and where do you think it needs progress in regards to what we're seeing in Pakistan?
Feminism has 100% evolved because we've moved past ideas of Western feminism, white feminism, into thinking about feminism as something that's intersectional. Now, I don't know if you guys know what that means, but to look at something intersectionally is to understand how things like race and class, background, position, whether you live in a city, whether you live in a village, what your opportunities have been in life, how all of these intersect with your gender, and then your opportunities in life, the possibilities in your life are shaped by all of these things together. So obviously life will be harder, for example, a black man in America than for a white man in America, right? But things will be doubly harder for a black woman in America, because the intersection of those two oppressions is what causes more difficulty. Now, we've started thinking about feminism intersectionally, and it's very helpful, especially in Pakistan, where class plays such a big role in experiences of women. So we are able to sit here, not just because we're strong, independent women, which I'm sure each of us are, but also because we've had certain privileges in our life, because of the classes that we were in, because there wasn't the expectation on us that we would just get married, sit at home, run the house. Right? There were people who I knew when I went for my PhD who said, but no man will want to marry a woman more educated than him. And I was like, well, that's none of my business, personally. And so we have to think through how your position in life as a woman, you're a woman, and also other things, lead you to the opportunities you're able to have, and we need to uplift women who are in positions that are more marginalized than us. And also, if we think about feminism progressing, another thing that's progressed is misogyny. Now, I know all of you here have heard of Andrew Tate, and I know many of you have watched his videos, and I just want to say that's horrible. We shouldn't be doing it. You do not have to define yourself as a man by claiming that you're better than women or claiming that you're more capable than women.
Ms. Noor, I have a question for you. What advice would you give to any girl who approaches you and says that she wants to make it big in sports? Are there specific organizations or initiatives that you would guide her towards? Is there anything that you would personally recommend while she's on that journey? Because these especially being in sports, I think these experiences you must be resonating with very strongly.
I would definitely advise them to, just believe in themselves and just stay focused and dedicated to what they want to do and pursue, and surround themselves with people who make them happy, to support them, and to motivate them. So yeah, they can reach out to the federations like the any sports federation, like for instance for tennis, Pakistan Tennis Federation, and they can reach out to Pakistan Sports Board. There is a Women's Sports Association. They can reach out to them. They can support them and provide them with the resources they want. So
I have another question for all of you. LACAS has a very proud legacy of being the only institute in the 80s that made A-level accessible to women. How do you feel being an alumnus of a Trailblazing institute like this, and how do you feel that being a LACASian helped you along the way on your journey?
Okay, so I think that's amazing. I didn't know of this at all. So this is quite a pleasant surprise. I think it truly feels great to be part of such a legacy. For me, at least, LACAS was a very nurturing environment. The amazing women, the teachers that were there, they were very strong influences for me. And I definitely feel that nurturing environment was where, I gained the confidence and was motivated as well that I could do anything. The path that I sort of have come down to, it wasn't really set in stone at that time. I didn't really know that this is what I was going to be doing right now. But, because it was such a nurturing environment at that time, I was always reminded that, girls and you or, everyone can do literally anything that they set their mind onto. And that is the power I feel that the teachers have. So when, all of these girls that are sitting here, the youngsters that are sitting here, the boys that are sitting here, I definitely feel that the seed is planted from childhood, from school, when you start telling them that they can really, really achieve whatever that they want to. So yeah. So,
sitting here. I'm like the OG LACAS. I was here when that A was not there. Okay, it was LCAS LACAS. And so this school is a huge part of my identity. Because we were here right from the beginning, grade 1, even earlier actually, was when my journey at LACAS started. And I'm so proud of it because it was always so different from the other schools. It was a different environment. It was a more unhindered environment. I think you had access to so much more in terms of thinking and also in terms of opportunities, whether it was drama or debates. I think LACAS had such a rich legacy. And obviously, public speaking, that's where it comes from all the debating championships that we did here. This school is always going to have a special place in my heart because it's a huge part of who I am. And my teachers, we have Mrs. Anwar sitting here, she was my sociology teacher. Impact on my life, and my government and politics teacher, Mrs. Umar, she's not part of the faculty anymore. But I remember that she used to say to me, maybe I wasn't thinking about it, I was always interested in politics, but I thought, I don't think this is the path for me. And she used to tell me that, Meher, I want to see you in Parliament one day. And I said, Chale, Mrs. Umar, we'll see how that goes. But I think because it was always a co-ed school and that sort of environment, I think that the teachers played a huge role in encouraging the girls as much as they did the boys. And it allowed you to see yourself in an environment where there were men and women and you thriving and competing from a young age on an equal basis. And I think that prepares you better for the world that you're going to go and navigate, because that world is not segregated. And you do have to compete. Once you're out in the real world, you're not just competing as a girl. You're competing as just people. Nobody's looking at your gender unless they're looking at it negatively. Your gender is a handicap that you have to overcome. Unfortunately, that's the hard truth. Your gender does act like a handicap that you do have to overcome. And you can. Don't let it be a handicap in your mind. Just be mentally prepared that people will, and also people are sitting there almost watching it. Okay, she thinks she can do this. They're waiting, trying to watch you fail, hoping that you will fail and prove them right. Which is why you have to work twice as hard, and which is why you have to win. Because they're not right. You can do it. In fact, you can do it even better than they do. And that's essentially what they're scared of. These girls are going to come in and they're going to challenge the norms, and then they're going to question the things that we have for so long said कि ये ऐसे ही चलता है, because the culture is different. Like even in politics, I find that women question the way things are a lot more than men. Men tend to be practical. This is how it is. This is what people think. These are the expectations, and you say, but why? I don't accept that. We need to change this. And women are somehow louder and better at creating noise where it matters. And therefore, we need more women in public life, because we need to create that noise. And we need to be as we can be, and push those boundaries, because that's the only way change is going to come. Women will be that change. I firmly believe this. Women will bring that change, because women are innately against the status quo. So we need more women. So come on, girls, get going, get cracking, dream big, and work hard.
Very, very interesting points that you've shared. Ms. Raniya, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what Ms. Meher Bano just said.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that an environment like LACAS definitely helps shape you into the kind of person who is confident no matter where they're set down, and who finds themselves able to confront the challenges that come from navigating a gendered world. And Miss Kuli Anwar, also my teacher, taught me how to think about gender. So she taught me about how gender is something that is a social construct. It's not something that shapes what you're able to do. It's something that's imposed on you from above, from people outside of yourself, that says this is how you're supposed to be. And we know that gender is a social construct because ideas of what gender means have shifted so much and so far and so fast over time. And we've seen those shifts, we've traced those shifts, right? And we can come to realize that we can now decide how we want to deconstruct and reconstruct gender. We can decide going forward how we want to perform gender, how we can use gender to suit us, to better us, rather than allowing it to limit us. There's no one definition of womanhood, just like there's no one definition of masculinity. You don't have to be a certain way to be a good woman or to be a good man. You get to choose how you want to be, and that is your gender. That is you performing your gender. You don't have to listen to the voices and the noise outside. Like, for example, as a woman in politics, I'm sure it's very difficult to be the sort of woman who is loud, who is demanding attention in certain ways.
Not just that, sorry, let me jump in here a little bit. There's also it's a very demanding, difficult life, right? It's not, you're not in one city, you're not at home all the time, or you're not at home at like 5 or 6 p.m. Every day. There are times when you're away from home a lot. So, you do get the, hi, bache. Bachon ka kya hoga? I have 3 daughters, so I'm like, be super inspired. I think they'll be better for it. But you will have people constantly saying like, oh my God, but you're doing this, but what about your home? And what about your family? And what about your marriage? But what about the kids? Because the kids, it's the softest target where you can control a woman or get her to curtail her dreams a little bit. And you just have to push through. As long as your children are thriving and they're healthy and they're happy, you're doing your job. They don't need you to be there helicoptering like 24/7. You don't need to perpetually, you don't need to know what's on their menu every single day. Nobody knew what was on our menu every single day. I'm sorry, my mother never dropped me to school or picked me up, and look at me, I did really good. It's okay. You don't have to do all of that. You don't have to constantly organize play dates for your kids. This is important for girls because somehow when you become mothers, everybody thinks that your life now needs to revolve around motherhood or being a parent. And it's really important to be present in your child's life, but present in a way that is more qualitative. Present as in knowing or talking to them about their hopes, their dreams, about shaping their attitudes, making them more sensitive to other people, their surroundings, allowing them to find their voice and sort of articulate their feelings, advocate for themselves. That is the way in which I think a mother or a parent needs to be present. Your physical presence is not as important. And I find women face that in most careers and fields, especially the ones that are more demanding of your time. And you shouldn't let that hold you back. Like the mother guilt is what people try to use to sort of get you to hold back. And I don't think you should feel guilty. Like I do spend maybe 50% of my time away from my kids, or I'd say 45%. And I'm proud to say that I feel zero guilt. Like zero. Zero. Yeah, because you have to overcome it. Otherwise you can't do what you do. You just can't.
I think it's also very important to note here that school is just as important as the home in a child's life, right? When
Absolutely.
Most of their time is being spent in these two environments. So the way that you're talking about motherhood, which is obviously very unique for every woman who does want it and who does is experiencing that. School is equally important in its own ways. Ms. Raniya, I am wondering in terms of gender equity in academia, when we speak of school environments, university environments, what tangible steps can schools take to ensure that there is gender equity? Where do you see problems existing, and do you see any solutions for them?
So, I think it differs across different levels of academia. So at the level that the students of this institution are at, I think it's very important to study women in the curriculum, to be aware of important female figures in history, in science, female contributions to the world. I think also it's important to foster an environment, which LACAS does brilliantly, that encourages women to think that they are capable of doing things, not to limit their own envisioning of the possibilities of their lives, which many schools end up doing, and LACAS, I'm proud to say, is not one of them. If we think about education at a higher level, there is a tendency to organize it in a way that is most accessible for men, that makes it very difficult for people who are trying to balance a domestic life to participate in academia, because there's this vision of the higher academic, the PhD scholar in particular, as this isolated genius, who's just sitting all day, all night working on their research, and that's really only possible for men because women have better things to do with their time. And I think that it's important to create in academia systems where women can access it, community-driven systems. Knowledge and the production of knowledge don't have to be isolated endeavors. They can be community endeavors. They can be endeavors where you're working collectively towards contributing to the human experience. And I think that once we ground ourselves in collectivity, in community, and in creating space for people who perhaps don't have all their life and all their time to dedicate towards a single research project, then I think that higher education and the humanities in particular will open itself up to many, many more women.
Absolutely, yes, very interesting points. Thank you so much for sharing. Ms. Noor, I have a question for you in regards to this. What has your experience been like in terms of community experiences, developing community within the sports domain?
I think mainly LACAS has been a huge part of my life because it has empowered a lot of women through education, not only through education but also sports, and I am one of them. So yeah, I think it has instilled in me the confidence, the courage, and the critical thinking skills in me. So I'm really thankful to LACAS for providing me all the opportunities and yeah.
We're so happy to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing. So we come to the end of today's discussion. I want to thank our wonderful panelists for sharing their valuable insights and experiences. Your stories have been inspiring and they truly highlight the power of women driving change in every corner of our society. So thank you to all of you. And a big, it's been so inspiring to speak with you, to learn from you, to have the opportunity to ask these questions. To everyone in the audience, I hope today's conversation has ignited a sense of urgency within you. It's clear that the women of LACAS are already making waves. And I believe that with continued collaboration and passion, we can accelerate change for a more equitable future. I'd like to open the floor for questions. I'd advise you to keep your questions within the scope of today's conversation regarding Women's Day only, please.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My question is that we see in a modern world that in some developing countries there is an evident violence and discrimination against women. So, in your perspective and experiences, what do you think are the solutions and conclusions to counter this and make the world a stable and genderly equitable?
I'll tell you, especially with regards to violence against women. I think the greatest role that has to be played here is by the men themselves. The more you educate and sensitize yourself, the more you consider, and then it starts from the home. The respect you give to your mother, the respect you give to your sister. Now, respect doesn't mean controlling your sister. It doesn't mean now suddenly becoming her dress monitor, or like where she goes monitor, or hindering her public space. It means becoming her greatest advocate, actually pushing for greater freedom for her, more space for her. Because when other men see, I think my greatest strength and power to navigate politics comes from my father and my brother's support, more than my husband. Because it was a field that they navigated. And they became my strength, my shield. And that's what you need to do for your female friends or your sisters or your cousins, like the women in your life. Is you need to be their greatest advocate and their greatest supporter. And that creates safer spaces for them. Because that also lets the other men know that she is seen as an equal at home. She has a voice and they're less likely to, because what is violence against a woman? It's basically a bully. Picking on somebody they think is weaker than them. When they see that this woman is not seen as weak at home, she has an equal voice, plus she has an equal level of participation in her home, it automatically creates a safer space and a safety net around her. So in this, and this is my personal opinion, I think the more space you give to the women in your life, the more you speak for them, and the more you allow them to navigate those spaces safely by being that voice for them, I think we will see a reduction in violence against women because it will change how we look at women. And that's where it essentially comes from.
Assalamualaikum. This was a really great panel talk and I love to hear all of your views. But I have a question from Ms. Raniya. You talked about feminism. So can you give us a clear view or understanding of the difference between feminism and radical feminism? And do you believe that radical feminism is a good thing?
I believe radical feminism is a brilliant thing. It's very different in sharp distinctions because there are points where these two beliefs converge. Essentially, both beliefs start with the same premise, which is that women deserve to be fundamentally equal in society, yes, that you shouldn't be hindered
from anything just because of your gender. This is the basic premise. Now, radical feminism might take it one step further into something, into questions like gender abolition, which is something that I don't think I was supposed to talk about. We can just mention it briefly and then move on. Gender abolition is this idea that we need to basically destroy gender, right? Which might sound really odd to all of you, but when they say destroy gender, they don't mean that you can't live the way you've been living your life, that you have to ignore biological realities. Gender abolition means that you destroy the idea that just because you're a woman, you have to behave in certain ways. Just because you're a woman, you have to aspire to marriage and children. Just because you're a woman, you have to sit in certain ways, dress in certain ways, speak in certain ways, fulfill certain roles in society. And so radical feminism says we need to look at the person first, and it needs to be an individual-led approach, and gender shouldn't factor into the way you move through society. And I don't think that that's a very fringe or really radical view, but we've been conditioned to think of it as super radical and super marginal because we're so used to the way things are. We're so used to the fact that we're going to go home, the women in our house are going to be doing most of the domestic work. We're so used to the fact that, oh, the men in the house will be doing most of the work outside of the home. And we've just accepted this as natural. It's not natural. It's socially constructed. And I think that thinking through gender abolition is a way to think through the unnaturalness of the way that gender infiltrates our lives. So yes, we should all be radical feminists.
I had a question for Ms. Raniya. You talked about how gender is a constructive tool to further enable patriarchal oppression. How do you think literature has been a unique field that is able to cut through that oppression and generate discourse, particularly within subcontinent, be it in the form of authors or particular stories that come to your mind?
That is such a good question. That is a brilliant question. I think that if we think about the literary legacies of the subcontinent, one of the people that I think of and I worked on in my thesis is Babsi Sidhwa, right? A really, really famous female Parsi novelist who wrote about her experiences of partition. And she was able to, through the literature, introduce a personal story about what it meant to be a woman specifically during partition, right? How it, because the histories that were being written at that point were histories written by men. Men had a complete claim to the mantle of objectivity, of rationality, of having the space necessary to articulate what people thought was the national condition. So for women, what ended up happening was that literature ended up being a space where you could articulate your own experience of history, where you could say the things that perhaps women were too afraid to say in historical documents. So, for example, Babsi Sidhwa, when she discussed sexual violence that occurred against women during partition, women who were actually interviewed in histories were too afraid to mention that they were violated. We found later through statistics that millions of women had been raped during the partition of India, right? But they were too afraid to be interviewed. They were too afraid to be counted because of the social ostracization that would take place afterwards. So you were able to fictionalize that trauma. You were able to put that trauma in literature so people could see themselves represented, could hear those stories without having to necessarily put themselves in positions that were dangerous or uncomfortable. So literature becomes a way of telling women's stories in a manner that both represents women and protects them. And it becomes a really important intervention in the subcontinent where women continue to face a lot of backlash for the kinds of things that is not their fault. They continue to face backlash for facing gendered violence. And so, yeah, I think literature has the potential to be a very important feminist tool in the realms of politics and in the realms of history.
Thank you. I just want to say, it's made me really proud sitting here today.
Yes.
It really has. Because look at the product. And look at what is in the making. Okay? And between it all are sitting all the people who are responsible for both things. And it makes us really proud. Three of these were my students. I can't resist that.
Two of these are my students.
Everyone's got to claim. Everybody's got to claim on this. I'm particularly happy to hear some of the things that you boys have been asking. It has really made me so happy that there is this conversation going on, that you guys are thinking like this. Because truly, honestly, if you don't, you're going to get so far left behind, you have no idea. And you know why? I think Sarah said that we were living in a bubble, and you went out of the bubble and you realized, I have a different theory. It's not a bubble, it's a well. We live in a well, okay? Everybody around us is going in directions we cannot even imagine. और हम अपने छोटे से कुएं के अंदर बैठे हुए एक दूसरे को देख रहे हैं. और आप जब इस कुएं से निकलते हैं, you will discover that my God, we really are toads. Guys, the world has moved. It's no longer okay to make those kind of sexist jokes that we all grew up accepting, also laughing at. Because majbooran, what else do you do? Because every second thing is aimed at women, aimed at women, aimed at women. I don't know what makes us so funny, considering we gave you birth. Great to see that the conversation with you boys, because you know what? These girls are going to make it. You guys are worrying about more. Get on the page. Get on the page. Those of you who are on the page will do brilliantly. Those of you who are not on this page will not do brilliantly out there, even in Pakistan. Even in Pakistan, conversations are changing. The world is changing around you. Look around you. See how much female achievement is going on. In spite of all the odds. कोई नहीं हाथ पकड़ के इन लड़कियों को लेके जा. But my God, are they there? In every field, in every whatever. This is a sample. Yeah? They're a sample. And it's a wake-up thing. It's a wake-up thing for all of you. And at the end, I just want to say my mantra, girls can do anything. Thank you.
So I would request Ms. Guli to present the giveaways to our esteemed panelists. First and foremost, Ms. Malik. Raniya Hosain. Dr. Sarah Alam. Ms. Meher Bano Qureshi.